Now, I mentioned in the Age of Revolutions the notion of the Industrial Revolution. Here we're just going to take a look at the Industrial Revolution and its consequences, much of this coming from the historian Robert Marx. There is a notion of a biological old regime and a biological new regime in world history. The old regime is an agriculturally based world where 80% of the labor force are essentially peasantry. The relationship to the land is direct and immediate. Climate shifts have immediate devastating impact on the human population. Disease is rampant and radical. Disease is also cyclical and seasonal, and it's always devastating. To fuel economic growth, coal, natural gas, and oil are essentially beginning to be harvested. Now, the biological new regime is a relationship of sort of changing relations with the human environment. You have vaccines, you can perhaps mitigate some of the climate impacts if you pay attention to scientific research and actually follow recommendations. This is the idea of sort of entering into a global period of modernity, which happens worldwide. It's not like Europe first and Asia second or anything. It happens in Japan just as quickly as it happens in France. Nonetheless, there is a fuel of economic growth that is being drawn upon during the early modern to modern period. Coal, natural gas, oil, as well as other natural resources, raw materials. This must be combined with stable agricultural base in the economy first, since mass agriculture is the guarantee of a more stable labor force. These become the sort of predecessor to industrial expansion worldwide. Significant supply markets and environmental impacts are felt. The existence of significant supply markets, such as cotton in Egypt and India, and later the United States, there are also global markets of exchange that are important. So industrialization doesn't just require those manufacturing plants in famously Manchester, England. It requires that those be connected to Egypt and India as well. And there's also manufacturing plants being established in Egypt, in India, really quickly, right after Manchester in England, and for example, Manchester in the United States, New England. So the use of these natural resources is quite important for us to consider, since those are going to have dramatic biological and environmental consequences moving forward. So, that being the picture, let us consider the Industrial Revolution and some consequences. Indian cottons, calicos in white and printed, along with other printed textiles such as those of the Ahmedabad Calico Museum, pictured in the background here, became all the rage around 1700. But India was exporting predominantly to other Asian markets, especially in Southwestern Asia, Middle East, and Southeast Asia and East Asia, not so much Asia. In 1750, with roughly 25% of the manufacturing output of the world, actual textile workers in India in the 18th century had the same standards as those living in England or elsewhere. There was a certain sense of a competitive advantage. This is not low wages, not cheap working conditions, not even a larger population, but the competitive advantage is the ratio of grain productivity in Southeast Asia and South Asia. In South Asia, the grain productivity was roughly 20-1, compared to 8-1 in what became England. So this is the productivity of grain weight to the weight of seed. This introduces a competitive advantage of high grain yields. That leads to low-priced food, which then leads to a lower cost of living, which then leads to a lower need for wages, which then leads to a lower cost of labor. This is a competitive advantage for South Asia moving forward. So think about this when you're thinking about sort of surprising things to note for this week.